Today, how Haitian immigrants fueled Springfield's growth with some growing pains. The UN Secretary General tells Reuters what's happening in Gaza is unacceptable. And Coca-Cola and Pepsi face boycotts and dried up demand in Muslim-majority countries. It's Thursday, September 12th. This is Reuters World News, bringing you everything you need to know from the front lines in 10 minutes every weekday. I'm Tara Oakes in Liverpool.
Politicians, Bernie Moreno, Chip Roy, J.D. Vance, and Donald Trump. They have spoken my son's name and used his death for political gain. This needs to stop now.
That's the Springfield father of 11-year-old Aidan Clark, who was killed last year when a minivan driven by a Haitian immigrant crashed into his school bus.
They can vomit all the hate they want about illegal immigrants, the border crisis, and even untrue claims about fluffy pets being ravaged and eaten by community members. However, they are not allowed, nor have they ever been allowed to mention Aidan Clark from Springfield, Ohio.
Nathan Clark, with his wife by his side, was speaking at a meeting in Springfield. The small city in Ohio has become the center point of a contentious national immigration debate.
To clear the air, my son, Aidan Clark, was not murdered. He was accidentally killed by an immigrant from Haiti.
Former President Donald Trump thrust Springfield back onto the national stage on Tuesday night when he falsely claimed that immigrants were eating people's pets there. Over the last few years, about 1,500 Haitian immigrants have moved there. Their arrival is reshaping this city of 58,000, offering some promise of economic revival, along with growing pains. Reporter Howard Schneider travelled to the town to speak with local officials and immigrants to better understand what was happening there. Howard, what took you to Springfield in the first place?
Well, so back in July, Fed Chair Jerome Powell was doing one of his semi-annual hearings in the Senate, and J.D. Vance, the senator from Ohio, read a letter into the record about Haitian immigration to Springfield, Ohio. He said there'd been 20,000 immigrants and it was driving up housing costs and suppressing wages, and he was asking Powell what he felt the impact was of immigration generally on inflation, wages, things like that. I thought it'd be worth a trip.
And what's been the effect of the newcomers on the town?
Well, look, this has been reduced to a caricature of a mostly white industrial town besieged by a whole bunch of people from a foreign country who were sent there by the Biden administration to vote for Democrats or whatever. They weren't directed there. They're here legally under different programs. You can agree or disagree with the programs. That's a different debate. They were filling jobs in a tight labor market. And a lot of the other stuff, is at least exaggerated, if not flat out false.
In filling those jobs, what's been the effect on wages and housing?
You had warehouses that were going begging, manufacturing jobs that were going begging. The wages rose quite substantially, even with the expanding labor supply. Rents did increase there very fast over the last few years. Is that a result of Haitian immigration? Yeah, probably demand did push that higher, but it is starting to normalize there.
But just to make clear, there has not been an explosion of crime or pet stealing like Trump has claimed?
No, the police have been emphatic that there has been no general increase in property crime, in violent crime, or any of those categories of crime that get highlighted as really endangering the community.
Two Southern California wildfires have torched dozens of homes, torn through a ski resort, and forced thousands to evacuate in towns and cities east of Los Angeles. Governor Gavin Newsom has declared a state of emergency and says he's secured federal funds to fight the fires. President Joe Biden has called the Israeli military's killing of an American activist in the West Bank totally unacceptable. Israel has taken responsibility for the death of Isenor Ezgi Agi. Taylor Swift has won big at the MTV Video Music Awards, and that could be a big win for Kamala Harris too. Swift urged fans over 18 to register to vote in November's election. Earlier this week, she endorsed Harris for president in an Instagram post. Hurricane Francine has made landfall in Louisiana, pounding New Orleans with heavy rains and gusty winds before weakening to a tropical storm. Thousands of people were evacuated as the storm approached, and the government declared a state of emergency. Former Peruvian President Alberto Fujimori has died of cancer. During his 10 years in power, Fujimori boosted economic growth, but was forced out of power by a corruption scandal and later jailed for human rights abuses. He was 86. Over on markets, and the Trump trade is being dialed back after Tuesday night's debate. Carmel Crimmins has more.
Investors are unwinding some bets linked to Donald Trump winning the White House after what they viewed as a strong performance by Vice President Kamala Harris. So you've seen shares in Trump Media and Technology Group, that's the company that owns Truth Social, fall 13%, and other so-called Trump trades like Bitcoin and crypto stocks retreat. Now, market strategists are cautioning against reading too much into the moves because the race for the White House is very close. And politics and the role of the state feature in this week's episode of my podcast, Reuters Econ World. We're looking at falling fertility levels and whether it makes economic sense for governments to try and boost them. You can catch that show on Reuters.com, the Reuters app, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Ahead of the annual meeting of world leaders at the United Nations General Assembly later this month, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres summed up the past year.
Very tough, very difficult year.
In a wide-ranging interview with Reuters yesterday, Guterres condemned the lack of accountability for the killing of UN staff and humanitarian aid workers in the Gaza Strip.
It is clear that what's happening in Gaza is totally unacceptable.
On the same day, the UN Palestinian Refugee Agency, UNRWA, said 6 staffers were killed after 2 airstrikes hit a school in central Gaza, marking what it said was the highest death toll among its staff in a single incident. Israeli military says it takes steps to reduce the risk of harm to civilians and that at least a third of the Palestinian fatalities in Gaza are militants.
Let's be clear, we must condemn firmly what was the horrible terror attacks that Hamas has produced. But then afterwards, we have witnessed a series of military interventions by Israel in Gaza with a level of death and destruction that has no parallel in my time as Secretary General.
Nearly 300 humanitarian aid workers, more than 2/3 of them UN staff, have been killed during the conflict, according to the UN itself. Guterres said there should be an effective investigation and accountability for their deaths, following the UN top court's decision in July. The International Court of Justice said Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories and settlements is illegal and should be withdrawn.
We have courts, but we see that the decisions of courts are not respected. And it is this kind of limbo of accountability that is totally unacceptable. And that.
At a small market in Cairo, shopper Mohammed Ahmed stops to grab himself a cold cola from a refrigerator. He's purchasing a locally produced brand, V7 Super Soda. Ahmed told us that he, like many others, is still boycotting brands that he identifies with the US and, by extension, Israel, as the war in Gaza continues. Across the Middle East, Pepsi's rapid growth evaporated after the Gaza war started in October. And in Egypt, sales of Coke tanked. V7, the brand Ahmed is drinking, exported 3 times as many bottles of its own cola in the Middle East last year. V7 founder Mohammed Noor told Reuters that in the first half of this year, the company increased local sales by 40% compared to the same time last year. Coca-Cola and Pepsi say they are still growing in the region. Both companies say they don't fund or have an affiliation with any government or military conflict. And if you're thirsty for more, today's recommended read is about a 3rd-generation malt barley farmer who's struggling to land contracts for his crops. The reason? Americans are buying less beer. In fact, beer consumption in the US has slid to its lowest levels since the 1970s. You can find a link to it in today's pod description. And for more on any of the stories from today, check out Reuters.com or the Reuters app. To never miss an episode, subscribe on your favourite podcast player. We'll be back tomorrow with our daily headline show.